We'll call it to order, and we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have a nice audience tonight, and I think you're probably mostly here for the first item on our agenda. We are here to appoint the new Director of Pupil Services.
Move to approve Amy Oresco as the new Director of Pupil Services at the annual salary of $179,689 for the 2025-2026 academic year, effective February 6th, 2026.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Could you please call the roll?
Yes.
Mr. Whitehead.
Yes.
Unabashedly, yes.
My pleasure, yes.
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 Enthusiastically, yes.
Yes.
My pleasure, yes. Amy, congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, please, if that's all right.
It's absolutely all right.
I just want to thank all of you for having the confidence in me and my ability to lead the Pupil Services Department. I've had the privilege of working in Southington for over 10 years now as a coordinator, and now I'm going to have the opportunity to implement my vision for continuing to promote excellence for our students and our services provided to them, and really partnering with our families and our school teams. And to the Southington families, I look forward to connecting with all of you in the near future. And I want to give a special thank you to my family, my husband Scott, our children that are here tonight, Randy, Elena, and Darlene. Not here is our son Zachary, who's away at school, and my son-in-law Ben, who is home with my sweet granddaughter Charlotte. So thank you.
Congratulations, Amy. We're going to take a 5-minute recess so that people can get together and say congratulations in person. That was one of the after celebrations. You don't want to rush, but so we need to get moving. So, all right. The next item on the agenda is the review and adoption of the Board of Education 2026-2027 operating budget. Ms. Camuso?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposed superintendent's budget includes moving 4 special education teachers that are funded through Nexus into the operating budget. We propose moving 2 teachers from the Nexus funding to the operating budget instead of the proposed 4, leaving 2 to be funded with Nexus funds. This would be a reduction of $112,000. With that, I move to approve the 2026-2027 Board of Education budget in the amount of $130,187,074, which amounts to a 6.8% increase.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yeah, I think, I think there needs to be lengthy discussion, but, I understand that's not really why we're here tonight. Along with the, reduction of 2 FTEs, from Nexus back into our operating budget, I think we also need to take a hard look and a hard line when it comes to the asked social worker position, that FTE. It is my opinion and my stance that should not be rolled into our operating budget, for the coming year. I think that there needs to be discussion about social work positions in general, but more specifically on the school district's role in providing social work within our district. And if we decide that that's something that we want to do moving forward, I think we need to come up with a funding plan. So I would also like to see the board remove that from the approval of our operating budget as presented. I think that our Board of Finance has a difficult job to do as we look to approve and send our budget, to the Board of Finance for review. I would ask and, offer to the public that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with insurance. And hopefully, even though we don't have the insurance committee, the self-insurance committee anymore, I'm hoping that there's hundreds of thousands of dollars, in that budget line item that can be taken out. With that said, I think financially overall, I'm not okay with a 6.8% figure, and I understand that it's our job in part to identify budget line items to either reduce or eliminate. And with that said, it's my opinion that at a minimum we need to take out, the two positions from the operating budget, and then in addition the social work position as well. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Bashevsky?
If I may, first off, I'd like to thank the administration for their presentation, and again, the continued transparent way that we get to the number that we actually get to. With that being said, I'm happy that we've moved at least the 2 positions back into Nexus funding. Again, it's not necessarily the right thing to do, but it's the right thing for right now. Again, slowly but surely we'll kind of pull everything together. Looking at the budget, looking at what we have in front of us, a lot of it is, again, like, we're taking care of the people that we already have here. The continuation of services, with a couple of additions to continue, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the smaller class sizes on the elementary side of things, more special education staffing, which, again, after all the discussion that we've had over the past couple months, you know, I understand the need. Talking with parents, having those smaller class sizes in the elementary school is pivotal for making sure that our, again, take care of the students at that level so that we can fix the issues before they become 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders with those problems. I would second Mr. Carson's discussion here with the social worker. Again, like I've had a couple conversations sort of outside of meetings about this, and I remember a couple years ago, we were talking about world language in the elementary programs, and, you know, we could do it for around $300,000. And, you know, I'm not discounting what a social worker does. I know that they do amazing work, that we need them in our schools because that's the nature of the beast now with the type of issues that kids experience. With that being said, we're throwing water on a fire that it's not going to help extinguish. And that's my opinion. We have to start looking more at the core issue, and I think a lot of these issues stem from the home, from social media, from continued exposure to stuff that, you know, young kids shouldn't again, an 8-year-old kid shouldn't be on an iPad. You know, like, these are the things that cause extra anxiety for kids. These are the things that cause more issues. A social worker isn't going to fix those problems. It's just that person's only going to be able to help extinguish the issues that sort of come out of that. So I would rather see the $84,000 be used for more preventative education, whether it's education to parents, you know, education at the elementary school level. Again, like, guys, like 6.8%, you know, historically, you know, that's a big ask. And I know that we're playing catch up. There were a couple of years, I mean, that's all within here, but, you know, when it comes to FTEs, like, now that's a person we're responsible for again, right? Like, I feel responsibility to the people that we already have, and I think adding another person right now on an issue that we're not necessarily fixing the problem isn't the right way to go. So the way that this is now, you know, again, like, for me to get to that yes position, we would have to remove that position out of the budget.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I'm going to speak in favor of the original motion and oppose to the amendment. At a time we're seeing an increase in student needs in social emotional issues and substance abuse and suicide attempts and a wide range of student issues, our job is to help the students as they walk in the door. Sometimes the parents, maybe there aren't two parents. Sometimes the parents don't do that job. I know someone made a comment the community should look to do it. The police aren't trained to do that. Social workers are trained to do that. They receive education to do that, and that's their job. At a time when the needs of our students are increasing, we can't be shirking them. We are the Board of Education, not the Board of Finance. So our obligation is to provide a budget that funds adequate education, a quality education for our students. Other boards' job is to do the financial part, and they're going to look at what the town can afford, and they're going to give us a number, and then we're going to work from there. But at a time, and it's not only the student needs, but the staff too. The staff is being overstretched because there aren't enough people to do some of the jobs to help these students. If you read the book, The Anxious Generation, you see and I don't disagree, Mr. Bashevsky, about the iPads and all that stuff. And that is something I think we should look into, finding ways to educate parents, as you say. I absolutely agree with that. But as the students walk in the door, those are our students, every single one of them. And I just can't see us cutting that position. As far as the 6.8 number is, it does sound high. The question I would ask is if you're going to cut more. Insurance, we don't know because that committee doesn't exist. Don't know. That's why the committee should not have been disbanded. If you're going to cut more, it's got to be specific things to cut. It can't be a number. That's the finance board, that's the town council. Our job is the specific line item. So I'm in favor of the original motion and not in favor of cutting a social worker. We need that position.
Mrs. Clark?
Thank you. Schools are being asked to do more and more and more with less and less and less. We're getting less money from Hartford. We're asking our taxpayers for more. We're putting pressure on our taxpayers, and while I understand it isn't our job to come up with the finances, we have to be realistic. We have to look at what is actually feasible for our community. And we have to be cognizant of what the taxpayers can afford. Quite frankly, we're getting squeezed from both sides. We're between a rock and a hard place. Yes, our students need services. Yes, our staff needs relief from some of the day-to-day what they're going through with the issues that the kids are coming to school with. But at the end of the day, where does responsibility start? Like Joe said, it starts at the home with the parents. But we have turned into being the bucket that catches everything. Can we continue to just ask for additional staff without fixing whatever the problem is? I don't know. I don't have an answer. I honestly don't. The number scares me. What I do know is we are getting squeezed, and it's not fair to the taxpayers. Hartford needs to help us. They don't seem to be doing that. And at the end of the day, can we afford everything that we want for our students? Honestly, I don't think a 6.8 budget is the answer. I don't think we can afford it.
Anybody else? Mr. Chair? Mr. Whitehead?
I think we need to take a closer look at our partnerships outside of the school system with CREC, with the Farmington Diagnostics. I think the amount of money that it costs to send one of our children out just doesn't make too much sense. So, so there's definitely an opportunity there, I would think, because those students, that's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not sure what the actual number is, but how many FTEs could that be for special education inside our district? I also think there's opportunities with transportation, and again, not to beat the dead horse, but the self-insurance. The percentage increase with the self-insurance is so exponential, it just doesn't match up with the 6.8% that we're looking at right now. So it just appears from what was presented that there are some opportunities potentially and some work to do. I would like to see some more special education teachers, period, like a lot more. But I think that we need to glean those finances from some of those partnerships that we have outside of the community, i.e. Farmington Diagnostic, because we're sending our children there, and a lot of them have emotional disabilities. Those children are in the same classrooms in some of these outsourced schools with children that aren't similarly situated. So that's an issue. So you have a child with an emotional disability in the same classroom maybe with a child that's got behavioral issues or severe autism. It's just not working. So I think we need to take a really good look at the opportunities there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else?
And
Mr. Carson?
just one more follow-up comment. As far as financial opportunities within our overall budget, I think, you know, obviously we've identified, you know, some FTEs. I think we've identified possibly, you know, self-insurance once, you know, that goes to the Board of Finance. And, you know, to Mr. Brown's point, we do have faith and confidence in our Board of Finance to do their work and do their job, right? That's, you know, we are the Board of Education, and we're funding a school district. And so that funding, those budget line items and those financial decisions, we are the best informed to make those decisions. And that starts with our administration, and it ends here with us before we pass it along to the financial experts at the town level. With that said, I think, you know, we speak a lot about maintaining services, level services, student services, and things of that nature that revolve around our students. I think something that is often overlooked is transportation. It is one of our bigger expenses and line items here within the Southington School District. And we always say that it's too difficult to manage or too difficult to reroute or downsize buses because of the restrictions, right? Whether those are time restrictions, whether those are, you know, geographic expanse, our contracts with the bus company. I think that's another opportunity that when we do approve our budget and send it along to the Board of Finance, if they see it in their financial wisdom to reduce our budget beyond what we're submitting to them, I think when it comes time to reallocating the money that the town gives us, I think that transportation is one of those big budget line items that as a board we need to seriously look at and reevaluate. And with that said, yeah, that's my comment.
Mrs. Carmody?
Yes, I hear your arguments about the social worker. For me, probably one of the most important things in our budget is the social worker. We are dealing with children who have social and emotional problems at an earlier age. And to make statements that the parents should be able to deal with these problems, to me it's not fair, because the parents themselves don't know how to deal with these problems, and they are, my goodness, we see it all throughout the United States of all of the problems that our students have socially and emotionally. I don't know how I could ever, in clear conscience, do away with a social worker. I think it is one of the most important parts of our budget. That is my personal opinion about a social worker. These kids need it desperately, and at younger and younger ages. So I would not do away with that. I think it's very, very important.
Mr. Bashevsky?
If I could just rebuttal that. It's not that I myself don't find a position like that important.
Oh, I know you do.
It is. It's $83,000 to one person for 6,000 students. And, you know, again, like what I'm stressing is, again, if that $83,000 was being utilized toward professional development with our staff, being able to recognize the signs at early ages in the elementary school levels, and being able to have, I'll tell you what, one of the things that I'm most proud of in this community is driving by DePaulo, driving by Kennedy, driving by the elementary schools when it's parents meeting teachers, or going in for you know, the checkups for their students. like, the Calendar House is packed. Parents in this town are engaged. And again, like, it's not so much that a parent doesn't necessarily know how, maybe they don't know how to do it, but again, doing some level of educational involvement with parents, or again, the professional development with elementary teachers who get to see a lot of those students' parents as they come in for those checkups. Like, that's essentially where I'm arguing that the value.
I hear you, Joe, you know, and there is some substance to what you say. I will agree with you. However, I also have to tell you that I don't think the majority of parents, when they have a student maybe that develops a problem maybe in 5th grade or 6th grade, they really truly don't have the training or the knowledge of how to deal with it. It comes upon them. We need social workers. We need more than one in our schools, to be very honest with you. Yeah, you're right. $87,000 for one is not going to take care of all of the kids that we have. But those are real problems in our society today, Joe. And it's not just in Southington; it's throughout the United States. I'm sure you're aware of that. And professional development for the teachers, right? A teacher, when you're in a classroom with kids every single day for what is it now, 80 minutes, 60 minutes? I don't know what it is. You do get to know the kids, and you can certainly identify. I mean, I was a teacher for 30 years. I could identify when I had a student that perhaps was going through something at home, and stay after class and talk to them and stuff. There's just such a desperate need for us to reach these kids, and the parents can't do it alone, Joe. They cannot do it alone. And maybe professional development is the way to go. I don't know. And $87,000 for one social worker, is it going to take care of all of the problems? No. But I think it's a start. I think it's a start. That's my opinion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brown?
yeah, I want to respond to a couple things. We were optimistic also that we could cut transportation because there's a lot of buses out there that aren't full. So when we had Mr. Romano here, we questioned him. The issue was that if we do cut, that students will end up being on a bus more than 30 minutes, and we can't do that. The routes would be too long. They are looking all the time to cut where they can, and they will continue to do that. And the second thing, as far as bringing students back in from district, since I've been on this board, we've been doing that, and we should be doing that because it is very expensive sending them out. We've been doing it as much as we can, and I trust the people who deal with special education to do that when possible. We've saved a lot of money for this district over the last 10 years by bringing students back in and then hiring our local staff. So that is something we're already doing when it's possible. So I would love to find some place to cut. I don't think those are the places we're going to be able to. And the insurance, we're gambling if we're going to cut money without knowing what happens if we don't have enough money then for the insurance. What happens? I don't know. We go to the town council and ask for more money. We don't know the numbers.
No, we don't know that.
Without that committee, so.
Mrs. Clark?
I don't think anybody's going to say we don't want to help kids.
No,
I mean, all of us sitting here, we want what is best for kids. One person are they going to make a difference? Yes, they will. They will make a difference wherever they are. But at the end of the day, what can our community afford? And I realize the Board of Ed should not have.
That's not our job, Colin.
I realize that, but I'm also dealing in reality. In the reality of Mr. Medancy can ask for 27 new staff members, or how many were the, how many did they want originally? 49 or something? 40 something?
43.
I was close. The reality of where we live and what our community can afford, that is the bigger question. And I think, to Sean's point, when he mentioned the police department, a different fund source for a social worker, how do we pay for the services that we need? These are the questions that while yes, it's fine to say, well, we're the Board of Ed and we're just gonna ask for everything we need because that's our function, we have to be cognizant of what our community can afford. And this is my only point. And quite frankly, I wish that we had gone through line by line because of our budget during our workshops, because discussions of outplacement, busing may have been more developed. We might have had different conversations about this. I'm just throwing this out here. But
Mr. Carson?
Just again, I like, another comment, food for thought, right? Like, as we, as we make points and then we rebuttal and then we revisit the rebuttal, we're, as a board, as a district, as a community, we're set to take on, a big responsibility here in Southington with the building of new facilities, okay? And I want to make sure that that's not lost on this board, and it's not lost on the community, because while we sit here and present a budget each and every year, for approval to the Board of Finance, to Town Council, that directly impacts our taxes, our mill rate and our taxes here in town. And with new school facilities, we are going to be going out to referendum to ask for more money. So we sit here in a single year and ask for a 6.8% increase. And now, mind you, most of that is baked in our contracts, right? Whether it's teachers, whether it's maintenance, whether it's clerical, superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that number is like 4.2%. Right? Somewhere in that ballpark of the 6.8% that we're asking for. But I just want the community and the board to be cognizant of what our future years have ahead of us. And so if we sit here in 2026 and ask for 6.8%, what do future years hold? And, this is why I challenge the board as a whole to really take a look at funding sources when we start to adopt and integrate things like social services into our school district, because that becomes baked in to our operating budget. And in future years, if I'm still serving on this board, I'm going to be looking for ways to achieve efficiencies with new facilities, right? And new schools, not add more money to a budget which I already think is reaching the point of being inflated and too much for the community that supports the budget, because it's not coming from the state. We have the numbers. Our superintendent gives us the data and presents to us every year. From 2019 until today, 2019, we were at like 23 point something percent. In 2025, we're now at 17.1%. Percentage funding from the state. That's a 6% decrease. So what are we doing? Okay, so we're not getting it from the state, so now we're going to get it from our local taxpayers? If that's what we have to do, maybe that's what we have to do, but we're not talking about it. And we're not coming up with a plan to effectively execute it. because there's a pink elephant in the room and nobody wants to talk about it or come up with solutions to navigate around it and deal with it. So, you know, whether, you know, we're putting more parking at our schools. We're designing plans to put more parking in at the high school. You know, is there a way to do a waiver program for families and students that, okay, opt out of taking the bus, you know, to avoid the 30-minute bus rides? You know, charge families a nominal fee for those students that want to drive themselves to the high school each and every day. There are things that we can do and we can talk about. And I'll get off my soapbox for now. Hopefully I won't have any more rebuttals, but there's a bigger picture here is all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Carson. This is a big picture, and there's a lot going on here. And I think, you know, just to comment on a couple of comments I heard, we are playing catch-up. And I think we're always going to be playing catch-up over the years, because this has been, it's very difficult to build budgets when it's either hard fiscal times. It's always hard fiscal times, right? Taking taxpayers' money is difficult. But I think what we need to look at is where is the best use of funds for the Board of Education? And let's talk about the social worker for a minute. I know in previous meetings, we talked about it's the community. We should have the community more involved in the social workers and having them come in and take care of it. My only perspective on that is we are the community. It doesn't matter if it's coming out of our budget, the police budget, social services budget. We are the community, and these are our community of our children, of our students. And that's why we're looking at putting this social worker into the budget. Just for numbers, and I may be off by a couple. Right now, with the current staff of social workers, we have one social worker for 486 kids. One social worker for 486 kids. With the addition of one social worker to the budget, it's one student for 453 kids. What did I say?
You said one student, one social worker.
Yeah, if we add one social worker, it's one social worker, and the addition, we now have one social worker for every 453 students. You know, we all see it. We see it on the news. We see it in the frightening news reports. We see it with our own children. We see it in our community. Our children do need help, and I agree. Is one social worker going to fix this? No. Is it going to resolve the problem for good? No. Not if it could, that would be great. It's not going to happen with one, but we need to service our children. We need to service our community. We need to give our kids that response that they need so that they get the help they need, the teacher gets the help they need, the rest of the classroom gets the help that they need, because if you have an issue happening in your classroom, it doesn't just affect that one teacher and that one student. The entire classroom gets disrupted. We need to make sure that we're providing that environment for our students to learn and to grow and develop and become those people that are going to be sitting here at some point taking on these tough decisions, right? So I'm in favor of keeping the social worker. And Mr. Whitehead, I agree. Bringing our students back to our district, this should be a main priority of ours for the special education side of things. And we have Meg Walsh, who was in this role several years ago. We have Ms. Zaresco and her team that's going to be doing this. We've been doing this for the past many years, and it's working. We're getting our kids back into our community where they belong. This is where they belong. They belong with their friends, their neighbors, their families. So, and it does. It's a dramatic cost savings. For one student, it may be $20,000. For one student, it may be $175,000. We don't know the exact number per student, but if we could bring them back in, we're saving money and we're servicing our kids the way that we should be. Insurance, we talked about that at a previous meeting. I think we need to revisit. I think we need to revisit if we need a self-insurance committee. I served on the committee for 12 years. We make some interesting decisions. It's a tough committee. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of data. But we also can look at, does the self-insurance committee go out and bid on our insurance? Should we be looking at different insurance carriers? Should we be looking at ways of providing high-quality coverage to our employees, but maybe being able to save some money? And I agree. Somebody said hundreds of thousands. There's possibility of saving a lot of money, and we need to look at that. But I think the self-insurance committee, we need to look at that again. Southington's a lucky community because it does have engaged parents. It really does. And you go to the schools and you see them going to events, you see them putting their time and their effort into it. But I don't know if every parent is prepared or capable or has the skills of dealing with some of the things that today's society is putting on our students. I think looking at one additional social worker, is that going to break this budget? No. Is it going to help a kid? Is it going to help one per every 453 students? Is it going to help a kid? Is it going to make our schools safer? Is it going to make our classrooms more productive? My opinion is yes. So I'm in favor of keeping the social worker in place. I'm just looking at some of my notes. Bear with me. I think that's it. I think this is a difficult thing. This is a difficult decision for the board. I think it's a difficult decision for the finance board. I think it's a difficult decision for the town council because we're dealing with our future. We're dealing with the kids that are going to become the future. And we need to do what's best for them in the most fiscally responsible way we can. Is 6.8% increase a lot? It's $130 million. That's a lot of money. We need to provide an education system in this town that we and our students can be proud of and that we can put our kids out there into the world prepared for what's next for them. So those are my comments. We have a motion and a second. Can we take a roll call?
Was there an amendment or not?
No, he just mentioned it. No
Okay.
amendment was made.
Is this the main motion then?
Yeah, this is on.
It's the original.
Unless,
No.
is there I did not hear an amendment being
So
put up.
there wasn't an amendment. However, I know we discussed pulling two of the teachers out of Nexus funding.
Yep.
What would it look like if we were to, because again, like we're putting in for more FTEs, we're putting in for more teachers for special education, social worker, elementary. If we were to pull the four, a wash, so we've already proposed pulling two out of the Nexus funding. What if we pulled all four out of the Nexus funding?
Into the budget?
Pull it out of the budget.
Out of the budget.
So essentially, instead of $112,000, it would be a reduction of $224,000.
Taking all four out.
Correct.
If we remove the $224,000, that would take the total budget to $130,075,074, and it would be a 6.71% increase.
And again, like if we could somehow make that work, that would move me to a yes. So, and again, like it is the prerogative of this board that, again, we should always all be heard. But in my 8 years of being on this Board of Education, I've never had to vote no on what we send to the next silo. So I really want to make sure that we get this as right as we can.
Thank you for that. Could I ask what the impact would be? With not knowing what the Nexus funding is, how do we,
How
what
would
is
we
the,
pay
what
for
is the
them?
risk?
I think I say the same thing every year. We remove those 4 positions 3 years ago, I believe it was, and we've been trying to get them back into the budget. It was at the time when we had a lot of Art Besser money. The billings that fund those positions come from the services that we provide to the open choice students that attend our schools from Hartford. So essentially, we're collecting the data on those students and billing the city of Hartford for the students that come here for the services that we provide for those students. And it is fully dependent on the actual needs of the individual students. We may have a year where there's a lot of services being provided to the students, and then we may have years where the services being provided are lower. So the amounts that we're sending out to Hartford vary based on each one of those students. So that is always the risk when we're doing that. we don't have an exact number until the kids show up into the classrooms in the fall.
Thank you. Mrs. Clark?
No, that's, you asked the same question I was gonna ask. The risk. How many students do we have open choice? Excuse me. How many
It's
seats?
definitely been decreasing over the last several years because we've had limited seats available because we're trying to keep the elementary class sizes at a certain amount. That's definitely had an impact on how many seats we've been offering. I believe, and this is not a firm number, but I believe it's about 62 or 63 this year. And it has been much higher in previous years.
Ms. Carson?
So with that said, conceivably, as an administration, as a district, we could admit more students into our district through the open choice program if we made the seats available.
Yeah, I think there's two challenges that we've run into in both of these scenarios. And to Mrs. Mellett's point with Nexus, it's an unfunded liability, right? We know, we don't know what we're gonna bill, but we know we're budgeting for 4 teachers in that unfunded account. And so there's always the risk there. I think the second piece is what we've tried to do over the years is offer seats where we know and the timing is very difficult for us when the lottery occurs and when you have to declare your seats, because we want to make sure, and I'll give you an example, if we have our class size guidelines and limits, and if we're at very close at a certain elementary school, let's say 17 kids, 18, we're not going to open any seats there, because if it goes to 19, if they give us $3,000 for the students that we admit, but it costs me $50,000 to open a new section because we're now over the number. So we really can only offer seats where we feel that the numbers are low enough that even if we got a bump in enrollment in a grade level at a particular school, we still wouldn't have to open a new section. So it's very difficult at the time that they want us to declare seats, even to the point that we haven't even registered our kindergartens yet, and yet they want to know how many kindergarten seats are you going to give. I don't know how many kindergartners I have yet. So I have brought that forward to, actually just last week I met with the new executive director of CREC and brought that forward, and he hadn't thought of it that way. They just assumed that seats were declining in the chef agreement because of a lack of interest or will. And I said, no, it's your timing. The whole mechanism isn't aligned with a district's budget process. And so we can't declare for the unknown, just like these 4 teachers, we can't really declare that it's safe to put them there when we don't know what we're going to be billing those communities back for services. So it's a really complex problem that we have. And I just, for clarification, we're just going to follow this because we have to, finalize the budget. Was the question that if we took all 4 and put into Nexus to get to 6.71, keeping the social worker then?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I just want to point out one more thing, that anybody who's looking at the budget book, and on the front page, there's a summary that shows that we collected over $1 million in rental and tuition appropriations related mainly to the Nexus. A portion of that is offset by a very large overage in the purchase service line. I think one of you at least had mentioned it in the last couple of years. So even though I'm saying on this front page that we're getting $1 million, that we've appropriated $1 million back to ourselves, a portion of that is paid to the CREC services where we're outplacing paraprofessional services if the open choice student has a one-to-one para, so there's an invoice that I have to pay out there.
So it's just like a pass-through. They provide us the paraeducator through their staffing service, we pay their salary, and then they bill us back for it.
So I don't want somebody to look at that front cover page and think that we have $1 million and that I'm sad about $200,000. There's a very large overage in that purchase service account. So that's the other piece of it.
All right, so we have a,
I would make a motion to,
well, we have a motion and a second on the table, so
So
if
this-
we're willing to make an amendment to the motion,
I would,
I have to be honest, I could go along with that.
okay.
I would vote yes to that. Would you be willing to amend your motion?
Yes.
So the motion would be, and can you give us the number, Mrs.?
Sure. believe your motion is to remove $224,000 of teachers to the Nexus tuition line, and the number would be 130,075,074, and that would be an increase of 6.71.
Just to be sure, that includes the social worker then being back
Does
in.
include the
not-
social worker. Mhm.
Got it,
Not
okay.
the social worker.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you amend your motion to include,
Yes, do I need to reread?
yeah, why don't you do
So
that?
the motion includes what? Doing away with the
Okay.
4 teachers or 2?
Putting the 4 teachers back into the Nexus funds.
But keeping the social.
Keep the social
And
worker.
keeping the
yeah, I-
social worker?
I think I can just accept it,
You
right,
could
as
accept
an
the
amendment?
friendly amendment.
She can accept the friendly amendment.
And the seconder?
Second, yes.
So we have a motion and a second on the budget. Any further discussion? Hearing none, can you call the roll?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes 7-2. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the elementary construction project. Mr. Bedancer, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Mr. Oshana. So I had asked that this be placed on the special meeting agenda, just given the time-sensitive nature leading up to the referendum. At our last district-wide facilities committee meeting, we reviewed a lot of the timelines associated with our grant application and the referendum. And part of the conversation centered around the reimbursement rate that we would be seeking as part of the project, and ultimately what's the number we're going to be putting in front of the community. And one of the ways to maximize the reimbursement rate is obviously to meet the space standard, which means your enrollment has to align with the amount of square footage you're building. And as long as it does, then you qualify for the maximum amount of reimbursement, which in Southington is 50%. So if we stayed with the current school configuration setup that we have, and we built Kelly School based on the ed specs that we currently are going to be proposing and building out South End, then we won't meet the space standard for Kelly because the enrollment with the size of the school will be higher than the enrollment. With a school consolidation, you can redistrict, and all of the schools would then be, and if you remember Mr. Gallagher's presentation, there's the usage rate that you want to be between 85 and 90%. We'd be right at 85, 90% across the remaining 7 schools and meet the space standard. Additionally, there was a request made that not only do we present this project, both Kelly and the South End build-out, projects to the community, but also a kind of a forward-looking or a future-looking plan for the community so that they know then what. Because if we're voting for Kelly in South End, everybody in town knows there's 2 remaining buildings that will still need to be addressed. And I think people are thinking long-term down the road, what does that look like relative to our debt service? If there's 2 remaining buildings or 1. If we know school consolidation allows us to still accomplish the original goal, because when we revisited this last year, it was about maintaining like balance across neighborhood schools in terms of enrollment, not having any mega schools, and also looking at the debt service. There was a 9.5% number that was, given to us that we can't exceed. This would allow us to address Daranoski Elementary School, still stay within the limits of the debt service, and meet the space standards to maximize our reimbursement if we engaged in a school consolidation project. At our April 1st workshop, we had multiple presenters. There was presentations relative to by Studio J-Ed, which basically what are the costs if you do nothing? And we all saw that that was, detrimental, that made no sense. What are the costs if you tried to renovate all 3 schools or do new construction to all 3? We went through multiple scenarios. And everyone at the workshop at the time agreed that scenario D2 was the most viable option. I don't know that anybody thought it was the best option, because I think we still have all opinions about all of our schools. But it was the most viable, given all of the constraints, parameters, and timelines that we're dealing with, whether it's debt service, enrollment, reimbursement rate, and even the plot of land itself that we were talking about. So given that, we felt that it was important to take a consensus at the last district-wide facilities committee meeting so that this board wouldn't be surprised by anything, and the community wouldn't be surprised by anything, that if a master facilities plan was laid out that did fully adopt scenario D2. At the May 8th meeting, we only adopted phase 1 of scenario D2, which was the build-out of those 2 schools. We knew that what the back end of scenario D2 was, but we hadn't taken formal action on that. In order to go to referendum, the council has requested that we put forward a plan that addresses the future of those 2 schools as well, so that the community has the big picture. So what I had done was sent to the entire board, because I know not everyone's been, part of these conversations, because they've been going on for years. And just to try and recap, what was presented at that April 1st workshop, it is also on our website for anybody who wants to revisit it, because it's been a little while since that information was shared, along with all the questions and the public comment that was generated at that workshop, which led us to our May 8th decision. And so that stands in front of us again. I only brought that for you tonight just to raise awareness both to this board and publicly. For me, my hopes are to have some action on February 19th at our next regularly scheduled board meeting, simply because our timeline is really going to be run up against the June 30th grant application deadline, coupled with the referendum date and the time that we need to get the bond ordinance. So we're on a pretty tight timeline. I will tell you, I haven't talked to anybody who doesn't support the Kelly School project or South End build-out. Everyone knows it's time, and they're in support of it. I think it's just a matter of time for us to make a decision on those remaining 2 facilities so that the whole community has the big picture. And the consensus of the district-wide facilities committee, it was a unanimous consensus at the time, was to endorse scenario D2, knowing that it would be brought forward for further discussion at our next meeting. So that was really all I had relative to the agenda items tonight. There is no action, and I had shared with our community there would be no action this evening as well. And so I just look forward to that conversation. I will have Colliers, which is our project management group, at our next meeting to answer any questions that you may have about, okay, what does that mean looking forward, so that you have all of the information you need to make an informed decision. And of course, between now and then, if you have any questions, certainly reach out and I will get you whatever information I can.
So just a couple of points. So just to your point about this being going on a long time, I think we started this project back in 2019, right? And it's been going on. And one of the nice things that happened was it went from a Board of Education committee to a district-wide facilities committee, so that there are people from the town council, there are people from planning and zoning, there are people from finance, people from multiple boards across the town that have gotten involved in this, that hear what's going on and what the expectations are, and they saw all the presentations and were part of the discussion, and it was a unanimous decision, consensus at our last district-wide facilities committee to move forward. But there is, the council did come up and say that they wanted to have a broader view of what the next phases were going to be. One of the members of the committee is here. Mr. Chaplinsky, do you want to say anything on behalf of the district-wide facilities committee and the council?
Thank you, Chairman Oshana. Paul Chaplinsky, Chairman of the Southington Town Council and member of the District-Wide Facilities Committee. I want to, first of all, thank you guys for everything that you're doing, especially with the tough discussions on the budget before this, so thanks for that and all the efforts you're putting in. And I know that the district-wide facilities topic is not an easy topic, especially if we're talking about a school consolidation. I think, the committee went, as you had mentioned, Zaya, we're going on 6 or 7 years now. So, my only message is that from a council perspective, the caucus, the Republican caucus, and myself representing the town council on the committee, just asking for the plan to be laid out. Because, there's a lot of discussions that have been going on over the years about if there's going to be a consolidation, which school is it, which school isn't it. And I think that the entire community deserves to have a strategic plan in front of them that they can make a decision on. And I do believe that with a decision by the Board of Education on a school consolidation as part of the district-wide, it's going to allow the other boards to start to put in motion, what do we do with those other buildings as well? And what don't we do? You know, if there's concerns about developing a parcel or not developing a parcel, demolishing a building or not demolishing a building, repurposing a building, not repurposing a building, we can start to have those discussions as well once we know what the Board of Education's plan is for the consolidation. It's a, you know, this, clearly there's a financial factor here. You know, I think when we looked at the debt service plan, we're probably talking somewhere in the 8+ years by the time we're done with phase 1 and phase 2 with respect to affordability according to how much we can take on for debt service according to our policy. Doing 3 schools, you know, we wouldn't get to a 3rd school for 15+ years. And then, you know, it sounds simple, but in that same time, we have to also start to maintain some of the other schools that haven't been maintained. So it's this, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy of you know, continuously chasing that. Yep. And I think having a decision, I believe if we're transparent as cross-functional boards, I think the community will appreciate that. I don't think, you know, in any decision, it's never going to be 100% supported either way. But I think the community will appreciate the fact that everybody here is putting forward a strategy, being open about the strategy, and then let the community decide, you know, whether they like the strategy or not like the strategy. And then, you know, we take it from there. So I personally support the renovation projects for the school. So, you know, if we can put together a strong strategic plan, you know, Zaya, I've talked to you, and Colleen, you in the past as well. I'll stand with you guys, and you know, we'll go forward together, and we'll work on this, and then we'll get the community's feedback. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chaplinsky. In regard, and you had mentioned this, Mr. Bedancy, but for the community, on the webpage, there's a section for the district-wide facilities committee, which includes the April 1st meeting and the presentations that went along with that, the May 8th meeting, which has, I think, the final series of options, including option D2, which is the one we're talking about this evening. D2 is the whole phase. Mm-hmm. It's phase 1, phase 2, the whole thing. Okay, and it walks you through the steps. And then our last district-wide facilities committee is out there as well. So the last meeting, it's a video, I believe. I think there's a code, so the coding is in there so people can actually get access to it. So all the data is out there. All the reports are out there. The numbers are out there. It's a lot of pages, a lot of, Mrs. Anastasio has one of the reports right here. There's a lot of data, so it's good for the community to go out there and review that. It's been out there for a while now, but just as we're moving into that next step, if you have any questions, get out there, take a look on the website. You'll see exactly what we're talking about, what that data is. This is, as you stated, this is full transparency. We want to have all the data out there so the community knows exactly what's going on.
Superintendent, as part of your last public hearing, did put together a cost savings plan. He provided that publicly. Yep. That did not include reduction of teaching staff, I don't believe. So that is also something the community has.
Right.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Whitehead?
Just to clarify for me and for everybody at home too, D2, so is what I'm hearing that we are potentially moving forward with D2. That's the plan, and D2 is the plan that is going to close Flanders. Yes. Okay.
Mr. Carson?
Yeah, so, you know, to Mr. Whitehead's point, can you as chair or maybe superintendent just recap for the public what D2 lays out as a comprehensive plan for facilities moving forward?
Sure. I mean, to Mr. O'Shannon's point, a lot more of the detail in terms of the numbers and the timelines, the actual cost and timelines are within the presentation itself, but the plan was to build out Kelly and South End. That would be finished in 2029, the summer of 2029, which is at the same time when it's being finished is when redistricting would occur. That would leave us with 7 schools at that point. That's when Flanders would be closing for the 29-30 school year. We would then be redistricting. We would still be redistricting into the old Daranoski at that point. And then at that point, I think we need to revisit when we can bring Daranoski forward for referendum based on the economy at that time. You know, I mean, the reality is we look at the Kelly School project, we always had a timeline, but we can't dictate the future. But I think the goal would be, and I think the debt service, that when we looked at it in terms of trying to flatten it a little bit and not have such a big jump with the 3 schools versus 2, did allow us to entertain a referendum in 2030 for Daranoski, knowing that we still wouldn't be breaking ground there at that point for another 18 months. So the larger plan there, in terms of Daranoski, I think that would allow the council to have conversation about a new Daranoski or repurposing Daranoski if they know that that's the remaining school that's left. They can do some economic feasibility studies. They can do some, you know, we can do test fits on the land behind Daranoski to weigh the pros and cons of a renovate to new versus a new construction. But that at least, the other piece that was shared with me is it does make our grant application more viable with the state if they see that we actually have a master plan that's forward-looking, knowing, because we can't really just build a larger school on a promise to do something and then not do it, and to get the money. So a finalized plan would make the grant application more viable.
And, you know, and just to follow up to that, thank you for that. You know, I think, you know, everybody involved and the public that will eventually vote on these referendums, it's important to get this comprehensive plan, right? So I just want to make the comment that building a new Daranoski eventually, right, allows us to right-size that building and achieve the maximum reimbursement rate. So that's just something, you know, to keep in mind as we present and vote on a master plan.
Correct.
All right, so we will be meeting on, our next meeting is February 19th. We will be taking this up further, and that's the night that we would look to take action. All right. Before we adjourn, I just want to make sure, I want to check with the recording secretary to make sure that when we voted on the budget, when Mrs. Camuso amended her motion to include moving those 4 teachers back into Nexus, it was not an amendment, it was an amended motion, correct?
Correct? It was a friendly amendment.
Yes. Right. And that's what you have in your minutes, is that correct? Yes. Okay. All right.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Yeah.
As well.